Our arrows will blot out the sun. Then we will fight in the shadows. Alith Anar and the Shadow Warriors of Nagarythe will be doing what they do best today, murdering Dark Elves and nailing them high to the cliffs overlooking their homeland. Dark in the Skies gives plus 20 reload skill and an AoE around the Shadow King, so he can turn his buddies into pretty devastating skirmishers from long range. And Shadow Walkers are, on paper, one of the most versatile units on the High Elf roster. But if you're going skirmish heavy, one of the best ways to round out your build is give it some punching power and speed. And Dragon Princes bring both those to the table in equal measure. But things are going to get kicked off real fast here, because Dark Riders happen to Vanguard deploy right in the Arc of Fire, and they're going to melt away right from the word go. Now, in terms of builds, we're looking at 3 Shadow Warriors and 1 unit of Shadow Walkers that have 36 missile damage when near Alith Anar, poison on their melee and ranged weapons, and 54 melee attack against infantry, which is pretty absurd for an archer, but a very low HP pool and model count to balance it out. And the Moonbow of Lilith will find its mark again as it skewers a few more of those light cav. And for the Dark Elves, he had a pretty decent idea of what my plan was from the word go. The issue with picking Nagarythe is that it can kind of reveal your hand early, so he spread the field very wide here. Lots of shielded, cheap infantry, fast movers on the flanks, Harpies, and Malekith on a cold one to round out the rest of his build. So early on, those Dark Riders went straight to the trash can, and that's a big deal. I mean, it's only 500 gold, but making sure that they can't get into my backlines at any point right from the start of the match is pretty nice. And the Moonbow, again, finding its mark, taking a cold one rider out and taking a lot of these elite cav down pretty early on. So we're going to focus fire on those Witch Elves, really low armor, don't want them making it into my back, but we're going to get in there, and he's quickly going to notice that I've switched focus fire, and he'll pull away. So, very smart move there. Witch Elves will melt under Withering Skirmish Fire from Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers. Very low armor, so pulling away pretty smart. And now we don't have very many good targets to shoot at, and the Harpies are coming in to zone out our archers. So best way to deal with that is maybe a charge with the Dragon Princes of Kalador in that resplendent, that sexy black and gold color scheme, that black and gold trim. But as we charge in here, we are going to take the Harpies down to about half HP, but we're going to get a little bit too far up. Rest of the Harpies come in, and Cold One Riders as well. And we're a little bit slow on the uptake, a little bit slow on the micro, and pull out, and as Word of Pain goes down, we'll take a decent amount of damage as the Cold One Knights try to shoot the gap and get into our rear. So once that happens though, Dragon Princes of Kalador and Silverhounds will be waiting on the wings and ready to charge in from behind. But already, those Harpies are causing quite a lot of havoc and creating some space for Cold One Riders to YOLO up the center, which could be an issue because Dragon Princes of Kalador have been hit by Word of Pain, lowering their melee attack to 0. Silverhound's going in as well, and they'll all get hit by a Soul Stealer as MilkandcookiesTW Defying Miasma goes down, and those Cold One Knights get brutalized off the charge. And over here, an Avian Raptor tearing Dark Elves a new one, just tearing them to shreds with those vicious talons. But as pretty as it looks, it's not being utilized that effectively right now. Great Eagles aren't really meant to be sitting in blocks of melee infantry going to town, so definitely a micro mistake. I think that'd be better utilized back in the rear with the Shadow Warriors to protect them and make sure those Cold One Knights can't just get into them for free. But the Cold One Knights are going to take a ton of skirmish fire. Remember, all of those archers getting plus 20 reload skill, so that can do a lot of damage to Cold One Knights very quickly, especially when they're isolated and the only things truly in the back lines for the High Elves right now. Soul Stealer has gone down, Cold One Knights charging forward, and those Raptors taking a face full of volleys from the Shadow Warriors of old Nagarythe. And the Lore of Shadows caster moving back as well. Maybe another MilkandcookiesTW Defying Miasma soon to follow to slow it down and allow those Dragon Princes to get in from behind and get a glorious rear charge into the Dark Shards and the Bleak Swords. And the Witch Elves are on their flank, kind of inundating there on the right side. I'm curious if that's actually going to cause the Madness of Cain to kick in and cause those Dragon Princes to rampage. But right now, they have not. And Chillwind going to slow down those retreating guerrilla fighters and Cold One Knights rampaging. Now they have lost control. It might allow Alith Anar and his homies to cut them apart from long range, but it won't help those closest to the dinos. The hunt is on, and a juicy feast for the clever girls will commence. Shadow Warriors on the wrong end of Tooth and Claw, firing in, and the Lore of Shadows caster caught out, pinned by Harpies and Malekith, rampaged by Madness of Cain. I'd be very surprised if she makes it out of that one alive. Dragon Princes are free in the back line though, and this could be a glorious hammer and anvil, what the Warriors of Kalador are known for, and they will go for it. Bleak Swords and Dread Spears, y'all ain't ready. Watch that charge come in. Just absolutely brutal. Sent flying and almost immediately will break this entire flank. Just destroyed. And that's why I love Dragon Princes, man. That is a glorious charge, and that will break the entire left flank of the Dark Elves line. But of course, a lot of those infantry have now pushed forward and are starting to inundate everything in the rear. Shadow Warriors and Shadow Walkers in a pretty precarious position. Harpies tying them down. Dark Riders charging in as well. But to be honest, a lot of the mobility for the Dark Elves has already been eliminated, and Shadow Walkers are not that easy to kill in melee. Again, 42 melee attack, decent melee defense and poison, and they've got some speed too, so as Gaze of Malice goes down and destroys a few of those archers, they might be able to sustain in melee combat a little bit longer than you'd expect. Certainly a lot more tanky than regular archers would be for the High Elves. Dragon Princes hit by Madness of Cain next to their Great Eagle buddy, and Harpies and Dark Riders continuing to push forward as Chillwind continues to put pressure on those Shadow Warriors, slowing them down, limiting their mobility, and allowing those fast movers to get in. But the Dark Riders and Malekith are going after Alith Anar, and that's buying more time for those Shadow Warriors to fire in, and that DPS is really making a big impact. A lot of those infantry are pretty close to going down for the final time, and Dark Riders charging forward now, but Silverhelms will meet them and run over, just completely destroy those Witch Elves off of the charge. Silverhelms will die, they'll pay for it with their lives, but it is a torrid affair at this point. Both sides severely tattered. High Elf Spearmen getting into the Dark Shards, and these Dragon Princes did get rampaged, like I said, by Madness of Cain, and that's a mistake. They should have had free reign on the battlefield in the back here. There's really nothing to stop them. Cycle charging all day long would have been more than enough to kill all those units, so the fact that they got caught out there, definitely a mistake. But Shadow Warriors charging forward, and they're into melee, rallying to their High Elf Mage, who somehow survived that ordeal with Malekith, and heads will roll for the Lord of Murder. And this is where Shadow Warriors' versatility really shows. They have very decent melee stats, more than enough killing power to trade well into Dark Elf chaff, and that charge will pretty much rout a lot of those infantry there. We got a beautiful Penumbral Pendulum coming down into the flank of 3 of those Dark Elf units, killing a few unfortunate Dragon Princes of Kalador. But that killed dozens of Druki in that cast, and is really going to help turn the fight there as Witch Elves and Dread Spears get surrounded. Witch Elves now wavering, a lot of wavering on the field right now, and Alith Anar has survived as Malekith on that cold one chased him down. Another Gaze of Malice ripping into the flank, jibbing a few of those unfortunate Shadow Warriors. Now that Alith Anar is free, he can summon another clone and maybe get away. I mean, it looks like he is going to be able to escape. Took some damage there from something, I'm not actually sure what. That was kind of weird looking. But he's going to be able to escape from Malekith, and the Shadowcaster just needs to keep a wide berth away from the Eternity King, because Malekith is angry, he's pissed off, and now he's tied down, surrounded by Azure Spearmen. The Great Eagle getting in there, and an enfeebling foe from the Lore of Shadows caster will severely deplete his melee capabilities, and he's an island unto himself. Moonbow Valiath, AP shot, arcing forward, chunking him down even further, and Malekith has no support as the Dread Spears and Witch Elves are far away. Azure Spearmen holding the line admirably. Lore of Shadows caster getting a juicy little charge into the Bleak Swords on that flank. Malekith routes, and if the Great Eagle chases him down, remember, if a unit routes, you gotta make sure that they don't come back, especially one as important as Malekith. Great Eagle might be able to chase him to the edge of the map as Melkos Multiplying Miasma hits those Witch Elves, and the Shadow Walkers charge forward with those dual swords, bonus versus infantry, plus 12 bonus versus infantry actually, hits their melee attack up to 54. They've got poison in melee as well. They're gonna have no problems whatsoever carving through these Bleak Swords, and that will put the nail in the coffin for the Dark Elves in a very close game with a lot of stuff going on all across the battlefield. But this time the Azure will be able to hold on, and Nagarythe will have its vengeance as Malekith and his army routes. So a pretty close one. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit disappointed in my own performance there. I don't think it was horrendous, but I definitely made a few glaring micro mistakes that, watching it back, should have definitely changed. The Great Eagle was absolutely misused. It should not be sent into blocks of infantry like that. I think it would have been much more effective if it had been hung back in support of those Shadow Warriors, gone in to maybe charge into those Cold One Riders for a second, allow the Shadow Warriors to just shoot it to pieces, would have helped take a lot of pressure off of my own back line. And I kind of just forgot about it in that melee fight, and as you saw, took a lot of damage there. So Great Eagle definitely misused. Dragon Princess could have probably got up to 250 kills on that one that got 160 if I had microed them a bit better. Witch Elves will typically not be able to make them rampage if you cycle charge appropriately. So if I had been able to just keep cycle charging in the back there was nothing to stop those Dragon Princes from running roughshod over all that infantry. That would have also taken a lot of pressure off of my own back line and carried the day a little bit easier for me. And Shadow Walkers got 89 kills, which is pretty crazy. Was very happy to see that. But Malekith and the Dark Elves brought a good build here. I think there were some micro mistakes on the Dark Elf side as well, but he brought the right kind of build. He went wide. He got his Cold One Knights into the Shadow Warriors, but ultimately Alith Anar and the buffs he was giving his archers let them take out those rampaging cavalry, and once the mobility was gone, we could close in and finish off the Druchii for good. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time.